The scientific name of the fifth arcanum of the tarot is Magister Arcanorium, teacher of the arcana, also the great Hierophant, and the vulgar name is the Pope. The Hebrew letter is He, the numerical value 5, and the hieroglyph is breathing, the symbol of life. The picture for the fifth arcanum is a seated man in the robes of a high priest. His head is crowned with the two horns of Isis, with a full moon between them. This binary of horns is dominated by the cross of the great Hierophant on the end of the scepter which he holds in his left hand, so that the cross is much higher than his head. The right hand is stretched above the heads of two figures kneeling before him. This is the sign of blessing, sometimes considered a mute one, and then it is a symbol of the initiatory silence. Sometimes the Hierophant expresses the blessing in words. In any case, this gesture is a sign expressing will. One of the two kneeling figures is white and the other black. Like the woman of the second arcanum, he sits between two columns, Jachin and Boaz. Here, as in the other arcanum, there is the binary of the columns, neutralized, in this case, by the man's figure. He is seated, a hint on passivity, the absorption of the wisdom of the binary. But he is still a man. That is, he is at the same time basically an active symbol, putting knowledge into practice in life. This element of the enlightened willpower, of the active authority, will be the basic idea of this fifth arcanum, representing the most mysterious sign, the human pentagram, figure 16. The ternary of the great Hierophant's cross dominating the binary of horns gives us an important hint, so full of meaning. Here, the pentagram is upright, that is, with 3 points uppermost. You already know about the significance of its position. All these conditions, as expressed in symbols on the card of the fifth arcanum, remind us about initiation. Indeed, who would be the giver of initiation, if not our symbolical great Hierophant? The two kneeling figures tell us that the pentagram, here the master of magic, is triumphant, together with all the powers of light, even over the forces of darkness, compelling them to serve his good aims. He wisely uses their temporary ignorance and the weakness arising from it. An intelligent use of even the actual weakness will allow them to reach the necessary karmic redemption, or liberation, much earlier. Returning to the symbolism of the fifth arcanum, I will say that breathing in this material, dense life, means the presence of the vital processes in organisms. From this is derived another title for this arcanum, the life. According to astrology, the corresponding symbol will be the zodiacal sign of the ram. When the sun is in the sign of the ram, then we know that it is the first month of spring, and spring is Yod's element in the yearly solar cycle. It is that which prepares life, as the first breath of that life. Those readers who are more acquainted with Hermetism may now pose me one or two reasonable questions. 1. In the formula of the dynamic processes, or Yod-He-Vod-He, the He signifies the female principle. So what is there then in common between the female origin and life? 2. Why is the second arcanum, Beth, considered to be a female principle, and why is it connected with the fifth arcanum? What is the difference in coloring of both arcana? The first question will be answered by a short venture into the realm of Christian theosophy. The earlier centuries, 14th and 15th, as well as the more recent ones, 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. If, for every dynamic cycle, Yod-He-Vod-He, a continuation for it can be found, coming from its second He, which becomes the Yod of the next cycle, then the picture may well be reversed, and the Yod of our primary cycle can therefore be imagined as the second He of some former cycle. Any search for the elements of that earlier cycle will be an ascending process in the chain of causality, and must lead us to the cognition of a Yod belonging to the preceding, older order of things. And then the same question might well arise again and again. The first cycle in the chain of causality, the first family of the quaternary type, the student already knows this expression, cannot consider itself as absolutely independent, that is, not having any prior elements in the former dynamic processes. This is because the beginning of all beginnings cannot have Yod as a name, because the latter is always an active principle, vitalized by the desire of the necessity of fecundation. But the absolute beginning, as we said before, must possess the attribute of all contentment and self-sufficiency. This absolutely primary principle must be androgynous, neutral, enclosing in it all the elements of the dynamic processes to which it may give birth. In order to be clear and to symbolize this beginning, we will place a point over the Yod of the first quaternary of the transcendental realm. This point will remind us about the great, the inaccessible, the infinitely homogeneous, the perfectly enlightened, the radiant beginning, Ansof, Paranirvana, the absolute, and finally, the universal self or Atman. This inaccessible beginning, which cannot be an object of any mental speculation or investigation, manifested himself as the male element Yod, the fecundating principle, expansive, radiant, to which we can give the symbol universal love. This universal love had limited the passivity, the attraction, the female origin of shadowy character, the so-called restrictio, and fructified it. From the marriage of these principles, the highest Yod and the highest He, is born the element Va of the first family. Its name is Logos. The first emanations of this element will become the second He of the first family, and will lead us into the transcendental world, Olam Ha-Izuleth, of the second family. So why did the life appear as the female element? The famous Triatmus, 1462 through 1560, explained his Rosicrucian theories in this way, that the Yod of the first family was called super-essential fire, He, super-essential air, and the Logos, super-essential light. So we see that air and breath are identical with the female element. The terminology of the first and true Rosicrucians regarded the Holy Trinity similarly, and fire was the first person, air the third, and light the second one. The Kabbalistic transcendental world of the first quaternary was also called Spiritus Mundi, spirit of the world. In the second question, the Beth Arcanum, absolute being, beyond the limits of individuality, points to the female principle as something existing and corresponding to the male principle, something which should be learned, gnosis or knowledge, necessary for the development of the whole of the major arcana. In the fifth arcanum, He is the form which accepted the Beth Arcanum, human soul. Beth represents the realm of the female principle, and He fills this realm with existence in form. We know that the higher the numbers of the arcana, the more concrete becomes their meaning. Beth has the throat as its hieroglyph, and He is just the breath which comes from that throat. Now, we may pass to the numerical analysis of this arcanum. Equation number 9. 5 equals 1 plus 4. Equation number 10. 5 equals 4 plus 1. These give us the titles of the essence of this arcanum in all three regions of the theosophical ternary. So, for the archetype, 1 means the divine essence, and 4 the basic necessity of a form. The radiant element of the divine essence shows us the choice of the positive pole for the valuation of mental activities. Forms not spoiled by their irregular reflection and refraction become synonymous with good, and when the forms are corrupted, only with evil. So we have a new title, Magnetismus Universalis, or Scientia Boni et Male. In the human world, 1 can be interpreted as ver, man, the active and fecundating principle, cosmic consciousness, and 4 as elements from which the human body is constructed, also as auctoritas, the secret of ethical rule in the center of the cross, quaternary. In both cases, the fifth element is mysteriously added to the four primary principles existing in the outer world, directing their transformation and giving the possibility for realization of the great action. In alchemical terms, this principle will be called quintessentia, and this is the second title of this arcanum. Realization of matter must be fourfold, therefore we have four elements here. On the plane of nature, we will find the title of the fifth arcanum providing we are able to see through the outer manifestations of the four elements which belong to the fourth arcanum, the element of natura naturans of the first arcanum added to the fourth. Whoever by deep concentration and meditation supported by right activity in the outer world will see this unity beyond the limits of the outer four, will attain the natural religion, his reward for contemplation and inner merging. That is why the title of the fifth arcanum in the kingdom of nature is Religio. If in dividing 5 into 1 and 4, we will accept 4 as the world of elements, and 1 as the higher conscious beginning, then the sum of 1 plus 4 will symbolize man, as master of the elements, and ruler of the impulses of his elementary nature. By placing 4 first, and 1 second, we obtain the reverse result, that is, the formula of an impulsive man, whose manifestations depend upon the outer influences on his physical nature. We may see now how enlightening and exact the practical applications of knowledge of the tarot can be, and how interesting, from the point of view of practical philosophy, are the operations with the numerical values of the arcana.